Now that the next day isn't wrecked, what are you going to do?
Happy people typically are not alcoholics. Happy people are typically not addicts.
I want to be I want to be a happy person. I think it's okay to want that.
I think it's intrinsic to want that.
Yeah.
And without purpose, like we just, we die.
I agree with you, and I'm just thinking that another important point I haven't really thought about, and I think this could be really important. Let me say it out loud.
Listen up.
Hey, welcome back to the Sober Bros. My name is David.
My name is Daniel.
Together, we are the Sober Bros, and we are 60 days sober. You want to kick it off?
Sure, man.
How things been going for you?
Well, it's not my first time being sober. Some things are the same. Some things are a little bit different. Just like so many different things that we do again and again and again as we get older. But I would say that this time I feel more of a freedom. Like when we first did the podcast, it was almost like I was doing it for something outside of myself to a certain degree. I was doing it for the podcast. I was doing it potentially for my daughter. I was potentially doing it for the listeners and viewers. But this time, I feel more of a sense that I'm really, honestly, just doing this for myself because it's really high time. I'm 47 years old, and this is something that I can do for myself. That's been a big thing for me over the last 60 days now, is on this path of self-improvement, which is to do this wholly and completely for myself because it's the right thing to do for myself at this time in my life. And I cannot serve my community if I'm not feeling good in my body, if I'm not doing this for myself, if I'm not working on completely bettering myself right now, health-wise, spiritually-wise, mentally, then I can't show up completely for everybody around me in the world.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
Why do you think that that's changed? Just anything in particular or just time?
Well, when I turned 47 this year, I wanted to make this, I wanted to be healthier this year than I ever have in my life, mentally, physically, as I'm getting older. I started Taekwondo and I just really realized, holy shit, I'm like so less flexible than I even thought, I'm in pretty decent shape. I take care of myself to a good degree, but, just the stiffness, the aching joints, the lack of mobility, I'm in class, all these people are kicking like above their waist and to their heads. And I'm like one of those guys that can like barely kick at a 45-degree angle, and I was like, I don't need this to happen. I don't need to let this happen in my life. I don't need to continue this downward trend. I'm only 47 years old. That's actually really young. And so I wanted to commit to this and getting back in shape, taking control again.
Yeah.
And not just letting things slide, not acting like a perpetual 2-year-old in a 47-year-old's body. And so I was really committed to that. And a huge part of that is just not drinking. And, because drinking has a huge inflammatory response in the body. You can notice that immediately upon waking. And as we've talked about in prior, last couple of episodes, drinking wasn't out of control for me this time necessarily. That's a loose term, but, even just 2 or 3 beers a night, I can feel it the next day. I can feel the mental laziness and the physical laziness. And maybe I'm not going to get up this morning to do my flexibility routine, my mobility routine, rehabilitating my shoulder by doing certain exercises and knee strengthening, And so that's another way of like taking that control back, is like alcohol is taking this from me. The fleeting enjoyment from a couple of drinks is really nice in the moment, but what is this taking from me? This is taking from me the motivation and the drive to be as strong and fit physically and mentally as I ever have been in my life.
Well, I agree with you, but I wonder if I could push back a little bit and tweak some of the wording that you use there, because you said it's taking from you, but what if you're giving it? Because through your own choice, you're giving it to alcohol.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I feel like when I say taking it, it kind of feels like I want to get that back. And so what just came to my mind right now is that this has been a habit, right, since I was 20 years old, almost the same for you. And my habit is built on a foundation of programming and abuse and trauma that started very early on that wasn't mine. That was actually just given to me and put on me, and that wasn't even my choice. And so when I'm taking it back right now, it feels like these programs and these false ways of thinking have been taken from me, and I've also been giving subconsciously. Now I realize that I no longer am going to give that for the alcohol to take.
That makes sense.
Because it's a selfish motherfucker. And you give it a little bit and it's going to fucking take way more than you think. And so I'm no longer going to give that. I thank you for that shift in perspective. I like both of them, but that's a great shift in perspective to take on. Is like, you know what? You can't have it anymore because you're just going to take a lot more than I bargained for.
Mm-hmm. So early on, there was a take, and then it became a give.
Yeah, and now that I'm conscious of it, now that we are conscious of it, for sure, we're just like giving it up.
So we're at 60 days now. 30 days has 60 days been more difficult?
No.
For you?
No.
Like the daily choices, when 5 p.m. rolls around, is it easier for you to just brush it off?
I think it is easier because it's less frequent as I habitualize sobriety, as that becomes the new normal. The triggers and the desires, the cravings come less and less. When they do come, it can sometimes, because they happen less frequently, when they do happen, it feels like they're more imperative. So that's not fun. That's rather miserable, actually, when those do come, because it's like a breakup, you know, like when you break up with somebody who is just not good for you at all, and some time goes by, and it feels great to like be free from that and to be sovereign and to have your life back. But there's still some of those good memories that kind of pop up, you know, of that toxic relationship. And then maybe they send you a text, they give you a call or something like that. Or maybe you just see them out in public and there's like this pull to go back to it. There's almost like a melancholy aspect for it to me, but I have to remember, like, okay, those are fleeting good memories, right? But like, remember everything else that came with it that was not worth it whatsoever. And let's just like keep that door shut.
Choosing sobriety, you're deciding to be sober, and to decide means to cut away and kill off other options. You could turn back. Well, what are you going to do? I mean, you gotta decide.
Mm-hmm.
The 20s are over. The 30s are over. Now we're in our 40s, looking at our 50s. And I don't know. I'm just sort of reflecting back to you that I agree with you that you have to be really, I don't know if I want to say first principles thinking. You just bring it back to the root and simplicity and think through the decision. So you have a memory. It's sad and melancholy. You could have a drink, but you're forgetting the cost. And I just think that it's really important to remember that. I mean, nobody wakes up the next day and says, I wish I had a drink last night. Like if let's say that there was some party or something, some gathering. And then the next day, if let's say you were sober, you don't wake up the next day and say, I wish I had a drink.
No, I thank God. And I wake up the next morning, literally every day, be like, I'm free again. I didn't do it. Every night that I go to bed, I'm not wishing, oh, I had a drink.
Yeah.
My head's on my pillow right now.
Are there any like little Taekwondo tips that you would give to somebody who's like trying to stay on the path in their first 30 days, trying to get to 60?
No, thank you for that. No Taekwondo. Part of me wishes I was actually training at a really legitimate studio, but the studio I train at is it's called Casey's Family Taekwondo. And like, I'm literally the only adult on the floor. There's like 9-year-old girls on the floor. but it's awesome. I love training with my daughter. And there's probably something to that, but so over the last 60 plus days, I've made it a habit. You know, I get up around about 3 hours before I have to go to work, you know, and the first part of that is just stepping outside to like greet the day, you know, take a few breaths of air. And then I go into meditation and breath work and some mental rewiring. And that I think has had a more foundational, fundamental, transformative effect on me than anything else. That's really worked for me, is this breath work meditation technique that I kind of developed on my own, reading a few different things, Wim Hof techniques, Kriya yoga, breath work techniques, generating heat, generating energy, generating fire, generating strength, and then transitioning into a very, very, very relaxed and slow breathing technique. Leaves me feeling so invigorated, reinforced, propped up. You know, I don't feel wobbly. I feel like very strong in other areas of my life, not just drinking, but just like having a confidence, because so much of my drinking, I believe, was like this lack of confidence and not enjoying being myself at all and escaping through alcohol, because then it's like heroin. I do get to feel comfortable in myself if I'm anesthetized with alcohol. As I build my self-esteem, as I continue to get to the roots of all of the myriad ramifications of early childhood trauma and that wiring and that programming, as I continue that work, because I think for a little while I was just kind of coasting. I got to a point and then I was just coasting in my mental health rehabilitation, and I began to get complacent. And it was only 2 to 3 beers a night. But I think that led to a long spell of complacency. I was like, I'm not as bad as I was, not where I want to be.
Yeah, because I hear all the time from certain people I might follow online that they say no real change happens unless you hit rock bottom, or some variation of that.
Mm-hmm.
You got to hit rock bottom before you change. Some people, I think I butchered that, but maybe they say something like,
no, it's the other,
you know. And so that's the danger of kind of coasting in a complacent pattern of maybe 1 or 2 or 3 beers a night. Things are fine, but then that can go on for weeks and months and years, because those micro choices, by nature of just their volume or time, like you're doing that instead of something else. It's occupying space in your life where you could be doing meditation or building your business or any number of things.
Yeah, I have found myself over the last 60 days. Now I have this abundance of time in the evening.
So there's an opening up of time in the evening, not only time, but attention and bandwidth. And so I can focus on my business, and I'm on the computer. I'm doing stuff on the website. I'm tweaking things. I'm looking into analytics. I'm looking into website search optimization type stuff that I never thought I would have had the interest or the bandwidth to do. Now all of a sudden I do, because I'm equipping my body and my mind with the resources it needs to be able to comprehend things like that and to become engaged in that. Because I have heard this, that a person's business, if a person owns a business, a person's business is a reflection of their internal environment. And if I'm complacent, if I'm stagnant, then my business is going to be the same. And I witnessed that. I witnessed just a stagnation. It looks good, you know, everything like looks really good, but it's just nothing's really moving. Nothing's really, there's no energy. There's no bellows, you know, like blowing energy and steam into the engine. And now I have the mental and the energetic resources to be able to do that. It's been really exciting. Or just reading. I can't read if I even have had 1 to 2 beers. I can't read. No. what's changed between 60 days and 30 days as milestones? Not a lot. It's still the grind. I mean, it's still the work. It's the mundane, the boring of just, it's just another day sober. And so in my own way, I'm trying to simplify and be present with making simple choices that will get me to the goal in the future. Mm-hmm. The goal in the future is all kinds of things related to all life areas. I want better health. I want better wealth. I want better relationships. And the truth is, I've made a lot of choices which could be viewed as mistakes, which have gotten me to this place. So now it's sort of undoing a lot of the damage and the mess. And in a way, starting from a clean slate. So it's humbling. It's frustrating. Sometimes it's all these things.
You're almost like rediscovering a new way of being, a new normal way of being without the alcohol there, which almost feels like somebody waking up from a coma, and they're like, they wake up almost in a completely atrophied paraplegic type of state, and you have to get physical therapy to teach yourself how to walk again, how to take a drink of water again, like how to take care of yourself, all these like basic things. Now, there absolutely is this component of like, well, I always used to do it this way. I'd always like crack a beer, have a drink at this time. What do I do at this time? Or the subsequent days I would be like hungover, I would have to do, and I had like all this distractions and toxic ways of thinking. And now there's this whole other opportunity to do things a different way, but we kind of have to discover.
Yeah. And I think it's even more important, the second part. The 30 days for me, the more important focus and choice is like, don't drink.
Right.
That's the nighttime. But to your point, I think the more important recognition, is that a word?
Yeah.
The more intriguing aspect to recognize is the day after, because I think that's almost underrated. So the next day, you made the choice last night. So now today you're hungover. What are typically the choices you make when you're hungover? You're going to avoid this place. You're going to avoid this conversation. You're going to compensate for your injury in this way. So those become the habit patterns.
Normal ways of being, yeah.
Okay, so now that you don't have those, mm-hmm. there's all kinds of other options and pathways. I think that's the more interesting area to explore right now. Because for me, actually, the choice to not drink during the nighttime is actually quite easy now. But I will foreshadow and say that the 90 days sober, 3 months, because we've been there before, mm-hmm. like it's great, but typically over the 20 years, reaching the 90-day milestone is when the biggest temptation to relapse hits me.
Yeah.
And that's typically where I don't get past. How many times has that been? Maybe 5 at most, not many, but that's always where I've gone back, is because I'll start to feel really good and say, you know what? I could actually just have a drink or so. Let me just bring it back temporarily for this weekend. And then it turns into another
weeks and months,
years of drinking. So I want to be careful, but I'm just saying at this point, 60 days sober, the more interesting aspect of this conversation is now that the next day isn't wrecked, what are you going to do? And a whole world opens up there.
Yeah, I like that, because I have found myself sometimes, I'm not hungover. I'm not struggling, but I'll have the same tendency to react to a situation in that same way, because I have spent most of my adult life drinking. The next day, like social obligations, you might want to avoid this, you might want to do this, interact like this. I don't have to do that anymore. So I have to like relearn how to do that. But I'll find myself just like knee-jerk reaction, beginning to react to a situation by avoidance or something like that. And I just look at it. And I'm like, why am I avoiding that? Like, I don't need to do that anymore. So now what are my reasons for avoiding that situation? And it's just like a whole path of rediscovery, self-discovery.
Yeah, I keep finding myself, and maybe this is just an external projection, I don't know. I keep finding myself wishing that the world was different.
I think that's pretty common.
Yeah, because I find so much of like modern civilization to be really annoying. And I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm guessing that a lot of my drinking was just escaping the pain of existing in a society that is really annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously the hours of the PM when you're drinking, it's a numbing and an escape. Good. The next day, the hangover, a lot of that I can justify. Well, now I'm just in a cloud and I can kind of hide. That's more kind of abstract escapism. Without any of that, then I'm confronted with really interfacing with a society that really annoys me. And so now I have to wrestle with that.
Right.
So what are you going to do? I don't know. That's a work in progress. No, it doesn't need to be an answer or anything to that.
Well, when you say that, like, you're framing society in such a way, I don't think that you're talking about politics. I don't think that you're talking about that kind of thing. What specific components of society do you find the most annoying?
I'm hypersensitive more and more. I have been. This is not a new thing. This goes back to at least in my 20s. So at least 20 plus years, maybe 30. But I've been noticing it's been getting more and more intense. I'm just sensitive. Sounds, like even right now we're outside and it's not picking up in the recording because I'm so good at post-production. But there's all kinds of noise. There's landscapers, leaf blowers, and it's just really annoying.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wish it wasn't happening. I wish that society could just be having some peace. There's refrigerator hums, there's diesel trucks, there's constant noise, there's tailgaters, people are in a hurry, they're impatient, they lack generosity, they stand too close to you in lines. Those are just some of the examples. Your neighbor's dog is barking, you're wondering what the fuck is going on with that. People are leaving trash wherever they go.
It's enough to drive a man to drink.
Yeah, it's just really...
It literally is, because because you and I were never really day drinkers. It happened very infrequently. But we'd save it for the nighttime. But boy, motherfucker, when that nighttime came and it was like a chance to just like decompress from all that and just like let all that noise go, all those annoyances go, and like let that feeling of alcohol just like wash over you and you could like relax for a little bit. That was like a way of decompressing the nervous system at the end of the day as all of those elements of society just built up.
I agree with you, and I'm just thinking that another important point I haven't really thought about, and I think this could be really important. Let me say it out loud.
Listen up.
I mentioned that not only the drinking itself being a good thing for addicts, the experience of it, the escape, the numb. Well, I said earlier that the day after consequences are important to consider. Now I'm also realizing that the anticipation, when you're in the pattern of drinking as an addict, the anticipation from waking up until 5 p.m., knowing that you're going to drink, the anticipation, there's like, I know relief is just a few hours away, so I can get through this because, boy, come 3, 4, 5 p.m., I know things are going to be okay because I can drink. I haven't thought about that before, but I know from some psychology fields that the anticipation of a thing is where the real dopamine is.
Right.
Like a gift or whatever. The anticipation of, that's where the excitement is, the dopamine. Like, let's say you're going to jump off a cliff into a river. That's where all the feelings are. When you actually do it, like, that's pretty good. But then there's a cliff after the anticipation in the event. That's where everything falls off. So as an addict, the repeating dopamine hits of anticipation throughout the day can get you through troubling times. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that maybe we miss. Was that important? Do you think that that's
Oh, for fucking sure, man. I mean, there were many times I would wake up in the morning knowing like, I've got to work a double today maybe, or I know who I'm working with. I'm not the most stoked about that, or I've got to do these things and like, but it's okay because it's going to be like 10 hours from now until I'm able to just fuck it all.
And then after that, I'm going to meet up with the boys at the bar. We're going to bike there and it's going to be...
Fuck was the last time you did that?
I'm having flashbacks to like
20 plus years ago.
20 years ago, but those were good times.
They were great times.
That I have those memories of I'm speaking because the dopamine hits were so intense that I knew, especially the summers, it's going to be a great time. We're going to bike to this spot and that's going to be a really good experience. And I was going through hundreds of shitty jobs at the time and just to pay rent. And I didn't like the jobs, but I knew I could get through each one because I was going to have good time.
Relief. Just like Charles Bukowski from the post office.
Yeah.
Well, this goes back to your brief commentary on society. If we didn't live in such a society that required us to have such meaningless, banal existences and jobs that just grind us down to nubs, we're being forced to execute a human life, such a precious thing as a human life in such meaningless ways that this is the bedrock of addiction. This society is traumatizing. And what does trauma create? Trauma creates addiction.
Yeah.
It forces us to look for some kind of amelioration, some kind of boon to our existence.
So what's going to help you and me and the viewer and people all across America who are struggling with addiction, because we're living in this traumatizing civilization and you can't really escape that. So we need help. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I need help because otherwise I'm going to relapse and revert and try and protect myself from pain. Because, and this is just now, things could change in the future. I don't know. Things could change in a year from now, but this is how it is for me now. And I think it's how it is kind of for a lot of people. You might realize that you're having to deal with pain from, if not one source in your life, multiple sources, your relationships, your career, your work, your finances. You're taking hits from all these angles and you're feeling pain. And so we need help to not insulate and hide, but to just protect and heal daily.
Yeah.
And I know that looks different for everyone.
It definitely looks different for everyone. Desmond Tutu, the former Prime Minister of South Africa, I remember I watched a documentary called I Am by the director of like the Ace Ventura movies and everything. He experienced like all this head trauma and sent him on this path of like trying to find out exactly what is happening here and why do we exist and what in the world is going on. And anyway, Desmond Tutu said, we exist because we are. We exist because we are. Like we exist in community. And it's a very rare person that just lives their life entirely in isolation. In fact, somebody who craves more isolation, somebody like you, to a lesser degree, myself, but still, like I would rather be primarily by myself than with other people. Is that because of such a traumatizing society? Is that because we haven't had a semblance of real community for several generations now? Is that because of our own particular experiences that have driven us to something like that? And for many years now, as a society, we've been cut off from like more natural ways of existing as humans have existed for however many years a person chooses to believe. So that will look different for so many people. Some people are going to really enjoy the experience of going to Alcoholics Anonymous. Theo Vaughn, favorite podcaster, he talks about how he loves going to meetings, whether it's virtual or in person. Like, he finds a lot of comfort in just being in a community kind of setting like that. And that doesn't sound appealing to me, but like I was saying yesterday with Tara, being in this like little community 4 days a week, you know, for 30 to 45 minutes, I go to Taekwondo, and it's great. You know, I'm getting to know the people there, and we're like building connections and relationships, and I am finding sometimes I even try to like mentally, psychologically resist it because I fancy myself like more of an isolationist. But I find myself like leaning into it. Like, this is a safe place to be, like in community, and it feels good to have that sort of thing. I think it's just getting a lot harder for people to find a component of community that they want to participate in. I feel like, you know, when PTSD is an acronym, it's a phrase, it's a syndrome that was coined in the very recent history. So people coming back from World War I, first time anything like that had happened in history as far as we know about, where such large-scale numbers of soldiers came back, and they named it shell shock. And then after World War II, they started to kind of look into it a little bit more, and finally, many years later, it was diagnosed as PTSD. But to get those people, and Vietnam was terrible, right? Soldiers would come back, and the effort it took to get those people to open up a little bit, to be able to engage with their families and their communities, because they were so traumatized. Sometimes it was absolutely a hopeless battle. It's never going to happen. And so people like you and I think it's a similar thing to the degree of PTSD that we have. The amount of effort it takes to be like, to slowly open that person, myself, up to be able to want to engage and want to feel safe being in a community where there is real help, where there are resources that I don't have inside of myself to be able to stay strong, to be able to stay happy. Happy people typically are not alcoholics. Happy people are typically not addicts.
Yeah.
And I found myself over the last 60 days, since the first time we started the podcast, and like really launched me on a journey of self-discovery and my own trauma over the last 4 years, and increasingly over the last 60 days, finding my own source of like happiness and sense of fulfillment in just being a fucking human being. I hated being a human being for so many years. That's why, like, I hate being a human being, but I know by 5:30, 6 o'clock, it's going to feel okay to be a human being because I can start drinking again.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about it too much before, but I think it's an important way to phrase it, is that happy people aren't addicts. It almost could be like oil and water are not compatible. I don't think it's really possible to be a happy person and be addicted to a substance that is destroying you.
So consciousness shifting and so destructive.
I don't think it's possible.
I don't think it's possible.
You are either happy or you're in cycles, you're an addict in cycles of addictive behaviors. Now, maybe you can be unhappy and not be struggling with addiction. Maybe that's
true.
true.
There's many people like that, yeah.
But
But maybe they're addicted to Netflix. Maybe they're addicted to streaming and reels.
And so, because addiction is not just alcohol, it is escaping behaviors and patterns of behavior that is not helping you to be a vibrant, holistic person who is really showing up and contributing to your family, community, society. But I want to stay on the thing of being a happy person and addicts. Because I like to think of, I'm not going to say that I'm editing myself in real time. I want to talk about goals. Like, I want to be I want to be a happy person.
Have you ever been? Without alcohol?
Not consistently. I mean, there might be fragments of memories here and there, but the straight answer would be
no.
You could just say no.
Yeah.
I've had moments of being like, things are good and all this maybe, but so my goal is I want to be a happy person. You ever watch like any of those, do you see any of the photos or watch any of the documentaries of like old people in tribes or societies that have like these smiles and they're happy and like the happy wrinkles, not the sad wrinkles, but they look worn in a good way in life, like the elders who are happy. I'm thinking of like the people in fucking Tibet and the blue zones or Amazon, just somebody who's like happy. And it's not even that they're fit physically. They might even be a little bit flabby, but they're just happy.
Yeah.
Maybe even India, maybe even America. Actually, because I've seen some photos of like the old people who are over 100 centenarians and they're happy. I've seen just recently, like there's old grandma in the kitchen with her family and she's making food and she's still standing up and everything. I don't know. I'm getting off track, but my goal is I want to be happy. I want to be able to smile and be comfortable and really just knowing that things are okay. I think it's okay to want that.
I think it's intrinsic to want that. Air is one thing we need, and our body starts convulsing. Let's go ahead. Let's hold our breaths for as long as we can. Deep inhale, then exhale completely. See how long we can hold our breaths for. No, let's not actually do that, but we start convulsing because our body really needs it. When you talked about like the blue zones and the people that live the longest, one of the things that connects every single one of them, they all have in common is community, a healthy, extended family.
Friendships, family, connections, relationships.
They might not get along with everybody, but they're people that they've had connections with for many years.
They stay close, they work it out, they communicate.
Yeah. And that's one of the only things that really, it's not fucking fresh seafood like the people in Okinawa, and it's not fucking tzatziki of the Greek people.
What you're saying is it's not the dietary component that leads to longevity and happiness.
No, it's not like the rural Italians who are like eating.
The common denominator is
bread and drinking wine every fucking day.
The common denominator is how they maintaining relationships.
Which gives us a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And without purpose, like we just, we die.
So I guess just to sort of wrap up the 60 Days Sober conversation is like what I want to build going into 90 days sober, a year sober, and the future is like, so it's just right now we're working on the fundamentals. Don't drink. Find a replacement for the dopamine fix of the anticipation of drinking. That window needs replacements, substitutes. The act of drinking, that old habit needs a substitute. The next day that you're not compensating on a crutch from hangovers and pattern, you need substitutes for that. The whole phase leading up to it, the event and the fallout after it, daily cycles, you need substitutes for every one of them. That's the phase I think we're in now, and maybe the viewer is.
Now, I think the subject, especially the next day, earlier you asked me a question like, do I have any like practical advice from Taekwondo about that? Well, I guess I do, because like the next morning, if I'm not hungover and just like, oh, okay, let's like chug a bunch of water and coffee and just like bear down until it's time to go to work or something like that. Well, now I have a routine in the morning, not just breath work and meditation, but if I have the day off of work, typically, I'll spend 45 minutes to sometimes an hour and a half, 2 hours in a stretching mobility routine, strength building routine that creates a huge dopamine release in my head of just like getting in my body and working those chemicals through my body that feels amazing. And I get to look forward to that, the next day.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Well, you can see in the background, our family is returning from their outing to the beach. So we are going to transition into family fun time.
Yep.
And go out and do some things here. But we want to thank you for tuning into this episode, and we want to hear from you. If you have anything that could help us get to 90 days sober, what's working for you, what's not. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to share with us anytime. We appreciate you being here on this journey. We are the Sober Bros. This is Daniel, right?
This is David.
Right?
Right.
It's all right. So stay free, stay sober.